So yeah, 3 years. It's still kind of amazing to think that that much time has happened this quickly. And I guess they were right. They told me time would move faster when I get older. And now I'm starting to believe them. I can only imagine when I get older, years are probably just going to feel like months. But let's not dwell on that. Since this is a special day, I figured I'd take a look back. So you may remember for, I believe it was the 6-month update video, I had a collage of pictures showing what I was looking like. Basically, I took one picture a week. I started on a Thursday, and every Thursday I took a picture. After enough time, though, I just wasn't seeing a whole lot of progress, so I kind of stopped taking the pictures. But I figured I would go through that one reel again, as well as add the thumbnails to all these update videos I have. I did those roughly once a month. Sometimes I wouldn't do it on the same exact day, but once per month. And so you can kind of see how I've slowly become the beautiful woman I am sitting before you. Think back, it was really at the 9-month point. That is not only when I started to notice most of the side effects, but I just started to feel fantastic. Looking in the mirror stopped being something I regretted, but started being something that I enjoyed. I like how I look now. This makes sense to me. So that's the broad strokes anyway. I figure let's go back to the first and the second video I did. The main reason I want to do both is because the first one was a short animation. I was very subconscious and I really didn't want to show my face. For the second one, I found that confidence. They say in order to look to the future, you must look to the past. That's exactly what I'm doing here. So in the immortal debate between muffs and earbuds, I'm always a bigger fan of the muffs. My preference would be the ones that go around the ear rather than flat like these, but beggars can't be choosers. Besides, I know how expensive these can be, so I'm just happy to have these that were a present for Christmas several years ago. The first thing to mention before we get started with this first video is, since I just started HRT, I was still kind of self-conscious about showing my face. That and I discovered Emma Richu. She's an animator on YouTube, and I'm like, hey, maybe I can try that. Obviously, my style is a lot more lacking compared to hers. Originally, I was just going to do a short real-life video. You could really tell the mic quality ones have made. Then discussing other changes I can't show. However, I have found there is a demand for me to do an animation instead. With this style, I figured instead of a status update video, I would tell my story. First, that's pretty much my setup right there. How does that sound? I just kind of sound like a really hoarse Mickey Mouse, don't I? Still haven't really figured that out. I did before. I think I'll start with how I got on hormones. So after coming to the conclusion that I may be transgender, I went to a therapist to make sure. My sessions were online. As well as make sense of all the emotions such a revelation can give you. After trying more feminine things, I was convinced I am transgender. With this,
I wanted to start feminizing. My ultimate goal
Still can't believe I drew that.
would be to have gender reassignment surgery, sometimes referred to as sex reassignment surgery or SRS for short. However, such a thing is expensive. There is a chance the surgery could be botched, and even if all goes well, the recovery time would be at least a month. Plus, I recently had a hernia removed, and I'm not too keen on going under the knife right away.
That was about 3 years ago.
I figured, let's start on hormones and see how I feel after that. Maybe they will take away my genital dysphoria and I won't need surgery.
It didn't.
After several more sessions with my therapist, she gave me the number of a clinic that I could call. Looking back, I'm kind of amazed I didn't give up there. Getting in was several weeks of phone tag, needing to tell my particular story to each new person I called,
I became an expert of telling my story after enough time.
and needing to confirm several different details. That was the first hurdle. From there, I then met with the doctor. I told her my desire to start hormone replacement therapy, or HRT for short. The first appointment was going through my medical history, as well as why I wanted to transition. From there, I had to wait another month for my next appointment.
There was a lot of waiting.
During that time, I had to get blood drawn in order to see what my levels were, as well as fill out a few consent forms. I was a little crestfallen when I found I could not start hormones until after these signed forms were mailed to them directly. This wasn't too bad, but these forms had to be signed during our meeting and then sent. I should probably clarify that the doctor's office is at least an hour away from where I live, and I opted to have telemedicine instead. I love living in the 21st century, though the mail still takes a few days, and I already had to wait a few months for this already. By luck, we found a way to send the forms electronically, and the prescription put in the next day. There was some confusion at the pharmacy, but I picked them up on September 30th.
It's basically me trying to draw how I looked that day.
I was so excited to finally have them, but I had to wait until the next day, October 1st, as I wanted to keep everything consistent. From there, I took my first dose, and while I was a little worried about some of the bad side effects, I was more excited I was actually doing this. I could not contain my happiness for the whole day. Even for the first week.
My feet never touched the ground.
Whenever I remembered I had estrogen running through my body, a smile would just instantly come to my face. Truth is, I was hoping that after enough time on hormones I would find out I'm cis, but once again, I'm proving I'm trans. Sure, there are doubts every so often, but knowing how happy this is making me, those doubts don't last very long. Now on to the actual side effects these hormones have had on me. First week, I was mostly tired, with occasional bouts of anxiety attacks, but that was something I had before the hormones. Second week was a little scary, as I would have long periods of lightheadedness, which brought attention to my stiff neck. I was often convinced I was going to have a stroke or a heart attack, probably due to the anxiety again, but there was no denying I had high blood pressure symptoms. Week 3 is where it got fun.
This is so embarrassing to look back at.
The lightheadedness was gone, and towards the end of the week, I was excited to feel my nipples were starting to hurt. After research and talking with the doctor, I have found that this is a sign that my breasts are developing, and I could not be happier. I will admit, though, this hurts.
Very much.
I can't touch them, lay on my chest, or wear a tight t-shirt without them hurting. It feels about the same as if you pulled a muscle. Odd thing is, when I feel the pain, it makes me happy, and when the pain stops, I get concerned.
People must have thought I had problems.
Week 4 was about the same as week 3. The only major difference is I started to wear a bra when going to bed. This helped a lot with the nipple pain. Plus, it's great practice. All the same, I'm amazed I've gotten to this stage this soon. The doctor gave me an average timetable, and breast growth isn't labeled until week 6, if not even further than that. That's the only physical change I can think of.
It was only a month.
I think my skin is starting to get softer, and my face is starting to look more feminine, but that's probably just wishful thinking. Hair growth is still the same, which is annoying me. I have very slow growing hair, and I'd like to look more like a woman than an 80s kid with a mullet.
Debate's still out on that one.
I guess the last thing to mention is my emotions. I've heard estrogen can cause depression, and I have not felt anything like that since starting. In fact, I have to hold myself down sometimes because I'm just too excited to be on hormones. I'll try to keep this last point for general audiences. Estrogen has been known to lower your libido.
Fantastic.
While my drive has been close to nothing for the first 2 weeks, the third and fourth week is where it went really high up. So yeah, that's my first month on estrogen. I can't believe I'm actually saying this.
Feel that happiness.
I'm elated that I finally started HRT. I do kind of regret I haven't started sooner, but looking back at my life, this really was the best opportunity to come out as transgender.
This popular cliche for me.
Both myself and everyone else. The only problem now is I have several people I need to tell I'm transgender. I'd rather I tell them before my boobs do. I'd say that's about it. I'll probably do another one of these videos next month as well. If you have any suggestions for other stories you'd like to hear, feel free to ask. I'm an open book. But I refuse to say who I voted for.
Origins and no politics.
Until things cool down, I take that with me to the grave. If you have questions, feel free to ask. I just want to note politics still applies here, and I'm not an expert in all things transgender. Then again, is anyone? Till next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.
I gotta see if I can find a dress like that someday. I've got ones that are like over the shoulder, but the ones that like are held up by the mere size of your chest, never been able to find it. Alright, well, now on to the more painful one. Just looking at that thumbnail already. Oh, this is gonna be difficult. Let's do it. Oh, it looks so gross. I can't look at myself. I'm just gonna listen to it. It's your girl Julia. You may remember I made 2 little animations about my progress along this journey. 2? About how the hormones are going. However, I wanted to get this video out kind of quickly, and that takes time. Plus, I feel in order to see the transition in full effect, you have to see the person's face. Still got 5 o'clock shadow. So, it's been another month. For the most part, not too much has changed. I mean, my skin feels the same. Maybe my face has changed a little bit. So I figured since I'm doing this in real life, maybe I'll show you a before picture. It's the picture I still use. Yeah, I don't know why I'm so wide-eyed in this picture either. It was early in the morning, I guess. So I feel like, in terms of how I'm transitioning, I was left something to be desired. For a lot of people, you got like creams or injections. I'm not really that big a fan of needles, and I just can't see myself like, or well, they say it's usually in the inner thigh, but still, I don't think I could ever do that. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm on pills. So one is the estrogen itself, and the other is what's known as a T blocker, or a beta blocker. From my basic understanding, when you raise up the level of estrogen, your testosterone likes to try to compensate by also raising. I've heard some say that's not true. So the T blocker is a way to try to help the process go a little faster. And plus, from what I hear, it's usually best to go on a low dose of estrogen. Like this one, it's only 2 milligrams. It's really tiny. That don't come any bigger than 2. They say if you go for a bigger dose right away, it actually kind of hinders the effect, almost takes a little longer. That's what the doctor told me anyway. Plus I hear it takes like a toll on your emotions. Maybe it's because I'm on the low dose, or maybe it's just because I'm not that emotional of a person. I learned to feel emotions. I honestly don't really feel much different in terms of emotions. And I want to mention I'm not actually this big. For the most part, I am this big. I'm just wearing a bra because really tight shirts hurt now, and I need a little layer of protection. I'm maybe about half this size, which, knowing that there's growth at all makes me really excited.
What are the best parts?
So I think that's really it in terms of updates. So like the last few minutes remaining, I felt kind of inspired by, there's these series of animated videos out there called Psyched Go, I believe, where the main goal is to try to bring basic psychology into the home.
Still watch them.
Like I remember one of their videos, it's just like how to spot burnout or signs that you had a rough childhood, stuff like that. So, in all my research about being transgender, I figured I would just kind of share some of the ways that people have found out that they were. Maybe you'll relate to these, maybe you won't. But here's probably the biggest disclaimer I want to put on. If you figure out that you are transgender, that doesn't mean you have to transition. It's all your choice. Nobody's forcing you to do this. I hope. I mean, nobody's forcing me to do this. I mean, I'm doing this because I want to, not because I have to. So with these Psych2Go videos, the person has a very high and very calming voice, and there's no way I'm going to be able to do that, so I'm just going to talk normally like I did before. So probably one of the biggest ones I hear about is, how do you feel when you look in the mirror? Do you look at yourself and you're proud of what you see? Are you disgusted? Or are you indifferent? For the most part, if you're very proud, if you're very happy about what you see, that means that you are self-confident. You are happy with who you are. If you're disgusted, then obviously you need to make some changes. What those are is up to you. Feeling indifferent, that's kind of the way I felt. For the most part, whenever I would look into a mirror, there was only really two feelings I had. The first I had was indifference. I would just kind of go up to the mirror and be like, eh. But when I was a much younger kid, maybe up until like the age of 10, maybe 12 or so, whenever I'd look into a mirror, I'd just be like, what is that thing?
Go for the Arlie Ermy line.
That was my subconscious way of saying, you're not meant to be a boy, you're meant to be a beautiful girl. Even if you were to step away from the mirror, just look at yourself, look at your body. Are you happy with what you see? Are you dissatisfied? And if you are dissatisfied, that doesn't mean you have to all of a sudden take all the hormones or start wearing every single article of clothing of the other gender or doing everything. You can go in small steps. That's why it's called a transition. A transitional period is something that takes time.
Sometimes I wish it could be faster.
I think that's just about it. Like everybody I came out to, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm an open book. Although I must say this last thing, I will not be discussing politics. I have done that before, and I'm pretty sure at least 10 more people want me dead. I'm not doing that again. So until next time, be yourself, no matter who that is. I won't judge.
That was the first time I said that.
And now on to the section of the video where I actually described what happened this month. Unfortunately, it didn't start out very well. The problem is, the pharmacist put me on a new T blocker. Maybe it was cheaper, maybe it was easier to get a hold of, but either way, I saw it was different and figured I better keep an eye on it. Well, unfortunately, I started reverting. Basically, some of the more masculine tendencies I used to have started to come back. I can tell you right now, that right there will just lay any doubt in my mind that I am 100% transgender, because when I started turning back, oh, I hated it. Biggest things was I had to shave a lot more often. I was horny all over again, and I hate being horny. For me, being horny is like being under mind control. It's something that I feel like I just can't control myself. It was a little easier this time around, but still, it was very scary. And the biggest problem is, there was no way I could exchange this for what I had been on in the past. I was able to at least pick up a 9-day supply to be able to have a nice little respite in the middle, but until pretty close to the end of this month, I was on that new T blocker, and well, let's just say I've gained a lot more perspectives. At least I was able to get it resolved, and I definitely made a federal case out of it because this new T blocker I was on just wasn't working. And this old stuff, I had a few minor complaints here and there. Other than that, perfectly fine. So I am very happy to be on that proper regiment again. So this next point right here is a little bit of a tangent, but trust me, it'll start making sense. So you may remember when I was trying to do all the book reviews that I was going through the Hitchhiker's series. Well, I got to the end of that second book, and I just remember at the end there it said, "Are you interested in figuring out what the rest of the adventure is?" To which I gave a very hard and resounding no. It just didn't catch me, but I don't really know how else to explain it. But I'm going to save that for a minor book review I'm going to do of it much later. But suffice to say, I first started reading through some of the Bond books to kind of help other people out with modding projects. And then I went to The Godfather. Now, people might not know this, but it was a book first, and then it became a movie. So why do I bring this up? Much like Cyberpunk 2077, there was a gratuitous sex scene in there, and it was just interesting to note because that's the second time I've ever really experienced a sex scene, and instead of being grossed or disturbed by it, I was more jealous of it. The only difference this time around is it was a straight gratuitous sex scene as opposed to the Cyberpunk 2077 one, which was a lesbian sex scene. So that one kind of threw me through a loop there. But after thinking about it a while, I think I was able to make sense of it. I'm trying to keep it for general audiences, but if you really want to know how I made sense of it, ask me in the comments, because there I don't have to worry about ratings so much. So during the middle of the month, there was this huge car show not too far away from where I was. This is something that I've been going to for a very long time. And I'm not really sure if I brought this up before, but I love me some classic cars. And I get very jealous whenever I bring either of my parents by because they're just like, "Oh yeah, I had that car, your uncle had that car, I think Grandpa owned that car for a little bit." And I'm just like, come on, these cars are just oozing with more style than anything I've seen off the lot. Everything is just bubbles these days. Or trucks. Or SUVs. I feel like if you even put multiple manufacturers together, you can see the similarities. I'm getting off topic. So that day, I wanted to do my best to present as feminine as possible. So I put on makeup, I wore a blouse, I wore female shorts, I dressed very feminine. And that was what was strange, is my goal was I wanted people to see me as a woman. But yet there was these old men that did see me and my mother as a woman and said, "So, how are you two ladies doing?" Usually such a thing would fill me with a lot of joy, but this time around it felt like I was back in junior high or high school again when people would say feminine characteristics was an insult. Much like how a popular one is, "Oh, you swing like a girl." It's very much how it felt like. And that was another one that threw me through a loop. I couldn't really understand why that hurt so much. I'm gonna guess more it was just the tone. It wasn't so much that they were pointing out a fact. It felt more like they were talking down to us. That's about all I could get out of it. This is really more something I brought up to my therapist, but I wanted to bring it up here as well. After that car show, I had to do a little prep for a wedding that was happening at the end of this month. I already had an outfit from the year before. However, the pair of nylons I was wearing the first time ripped on me. You always gotta love it when a nail doesn't cut even and then it's just a razor blade. It just completely sliced it up. So I had to go out and get another pair. Well, that day I went with my mother to do some thrift shopping and she needed to pick up some groceries. While I was there, I figured it was worth a shot to see if I could find a new pair of nylons, and to my surprise, she wasn't shocked by this at all. In fact, she was even helping me figure out where in the store it would be. I was able to find them all right, and she was even a little concerned I got the wrong ones, but they turned out to be the right ones. And it just really shows how things have changed over the past 3 years. Like, I remember when I first told her about this, she thought I was messing with her. I was just kidding around. Even more impressive than that is now she's referring to me as Julia. There's been a few times she had to introduce me towards the end of this month, and she used my name, Julia, and not the dead name. And it's just all kinds of wonderful. Kind of gives me hope that maybe someday I'll be on better terms with my dad, but, well, I'm not going to hold my breath. As for the wedding itself, I'll admit I was a little nervous because it was a family wedding, and this was going to be the first time I wore a dress in front of all of my relatives. And to my surprise, everybody was okay with it. I mean, they were a little shocked at first, but I think they were just more amazed at how good I looked. Maybe it's because I also got my eyebrows taken care of that day as well. And I'll just kind of talk about that for a little bit. So I just had no idea what feminine eyebrows were supposed to look like. I just knew mine were very bushy and very manly looking, and, well, now I think they look great. It's a little annoying because as I was getting them taken care of, the person there said I'd probably have to come back once a month for a little while until they retained shape. But you know what? I was able to get it done for $15 once a month. Yeah, I'd say that's a good buy. I guess really the only other thing to mention about the wedding is, well, I wasn't able to stick around too long with it because, well, I was stuck with dog duty. It does kind of annoy me that because I live alone, people are like, oh, you've got nothing to do. How about you take care of our stuff? Well, I'm also seeing it as biding my time because for every time I have to watch my parents' dog, I remind them that I'll need somebody to watch my house when I get surgery. Probably the last thing to mention. This was a rather odd incident, to say the least. So, just got finished with work, needed to pick up some groceries, and I just wanted to get home. I wanted to cook all the stuff I needed. And it was just the strangest thing. As I was going down the aisles, there was this one old man. He was winking at me. I was just passing through and all of a sudden he wanted to start up a conversation by saying, oh, how are you doing? I just gave him the standard good, and then I moved on to the next area because I was hungry and I didn't want to have to deal with that. The idea that he was winking at me kind of left me a little nervous. I kind of put that out of my head until I started loading up groceries when this same old man comes up to my car wanting a conversation. He just kind of wanted to know what my name was. He said I was very beautiful, which I didn't care. You're clearly freaking me out, and I just want to go home and eat already. And then after all that, he hands me his business card. The guy's a handyman, is what it said on it. And I guess it doesn't hurt to have one, but I'm not going to be calling him anytime soon because the creep's following me around. And on top of that, not only did he want to shake my hand, but he did what in Seinfeld they call the ham sandwich. I put my hand like here, and then he put his hand on top of mine. And yeah, that That freaked me out. I think about it and I can't tell if the guy's a chaser or if it was just very obvious that I was transgender and he wanted to help me whatever way he could, but yeah, that was probably the first time I've ever really felt. I'm trying to figure out what words to say, like harassed maybe? But then again, I feel like even that might be a little too far. But it was definitely something that shook me up. It's not something I ever really expected before. I just kind of go out in public and I'm just another face in the crowd, but this one singled me out for some reason. So, yeah, that's all I've got. 3 years. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to keep doing these once a month because I feel like I'm running out of stuff to talk about. I do have something special planned for next month. I was going to do it this month, but I'm sure that probably would have put the video well over an hour. So I figured I'd better save it for the first month after 3 years. If you have any questions or anything else you'd like to talk about, feel free to leave it in the comments. As always, no politics. Until next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.